Alright, I'm back with another Diablo 4 video ahead of tomorrow's Season 1 patch, which is not really the full season launch. On June 18th, they're just doing the big pre-patch, but that does throw the new legendary aspects and uniques into the world, so you would be able to find those on your Eternal characters. But the actual season launch, where you create a seasonal character and do the seasonal things, does not happen until the 20th. I wanted to expand on an article I wrote today that is not related to the season, but obviously we are going to be talking all about the season when it launches, but this is something that I've felt for quite a while now, and I know I'm not alone in this because it's pretty weird. And that's about how loot and gearing up and farming works in Diablo. For the most part, it's pretty straightforward. Like, you progress through the game, you do, World Tier 1 or World Tier 2 to finish the campaign, and then you graduate to World Tier 3, and game opens up, and you start getting sacred items that replace your normal items. Then once you get to World Tier 4, you get ancestral items to replace your sacred items. However, this is when things start getting pretty weird. And one of the main things that's going on here is once you get to World Tier 4, whatever level you are, you can be level 60, 65, 70, whenever you can beat Elias, you will essentially immediately start getting drops that can be taken to like the full end game, like level 90, level 100. These are items that if they're ancestral and above, 725, those are items that you can take all the way. And, well, that is good to a certain extent because it makes farming, when you're a lower level, kind of useful. It becomes less enjoyable the further you get because you are essentially never getting new items. The loot pool is the same from level 70 to level 100, essentially, or whenever you get to World Tier 4. It does not change. The only thing that changes is when you get to when you start fighting level 85 enemies, which can be like, I don't know, like level mid 20s, early 30s in nightmare dungeons. You can have a theoretical potential to get the uber uniques because those only drop after level 85. As we have said many times, those are impossible to get. Only a handful of people in the world have them, so it effectively means nothing. So what this means is the entire loot pool is the same the entire time from all of those levels. And that takes a really long time to level from 65 to 100 or 70 to 100. And it's very strange that nothing changes during that time. This includes power level items, because anything after 725, the ranges on items do not change. So from 725 to 820 or 8, whatever the max is, 825, these ranges that you see for the different stats on ancestral items don't change, nor do we think they have a higher degree of probability to roll on the higher end as you get later on. The only thing that changes is the higher the item power, the higher the base damage per second or the base armor level becomes. But if you get a perfect roll, that is going to be usually more valuable than whatever upgrades you're getting through that. If you want to get like a perfect build, you want the best rolls on the highest thing possible. But again, that does not have anything to do with your character level. You can still find those items at baseline really low, and there does not seem to be a better chance to get those items or anything you're looking for higher. This includes things like there does not seem to be a higher drop rate for really anything. The higher you go, you can be level 100 and still be getting sacred drops, which anything sacred is entirely useless except for whatever the affix is, because I think all or most of the affixes do not change their values between sacred and ancestral. So you can get these. This is a perfect roll of this affix, and you can extract that to put in a higher level item. There is like the different rarities of these, but these essentially mean nothing. Previously, you were only allowed to match these up. So you'd have to put ancestral and ancestral, sacred and sacred. That they changed that, so that does not happen anymore. So you can extract affixes, but the gear itself, this will never be good because this item 660 power, the armor is way lower, the ranges are way lower. Like it's not going to be useful, and yet these never stop dropping. They are not replaced by more ancestral drops as you go. Nothing like that. There's really no benefit to getting to higher levels other than you can get more progress on your runes when you complete nightmare dungeons, and it's just sort of a challenge. It's not like farming gets easier. If you are looking for specific uniques, there does not seem to be an increased chance to get them. Like you have the uber unique possible chance, but obviously that's not a real thing. They only just recently changed it to with Helltides, you can farm specific chests. There is no Helltide going on now. You can farm specific chests that now can drop uniques, although the drop rate on those is still low and does not increase with your level. It's a little bit better of a way to target specific slots, because I know some people are looking for specific uniques, and I've heard some people, I've heard of, on Twitter, someone was posting that they got to level 100 as a rogue and never got Penitent Greaves, which is a pretty core part of a lot of, melee builds and stuff with rogue. This is like my third pair of Penitent Greaves, and whereas meanwhile, in 150 hours, I have one Razor Blade. Just one, the neutral unique that is a key part of every Thorn build. I didn't get a Frostburn until I had two characters at, one at 90, one at 80. I just saw Frostburn. So does not matter on your level in terms of like trying to target farm things. And with the change they made to Helltides, again, it doesn't matter what level, you can just still farm stuff whenever. One of the weirdest things about the way loot works is what you're going for. And the main thing you're going for, outside of maybe the one unique that makes your build work, and many builds don't even need uniques at all. Like there are plenty of builds where you're just building all the affixes, and uniques do not allow you to customize their affixes. Sometimes I mix up affixes and aspects, so forgive me if I do that. So you're not really getting, like, I don't want slow duration reduction or cold resistance on these. I would much rather have different stats on this, but you cannot reroll them. So in many ways, legendaries, but especially rares, we're in a very strange situation where rares are pretty much the best items to look for in the game, because you find them, you look for the anywhere from 725 to 825, you look for the rolls and the high end of the ranges that you want. And that is the main thing that will help you make a great build. If you have all of the affixes you want, if those are at the high level, it's a bonus if it's a higher item power, but not really by much per se. And those are the rarest, well, not rarest, those are the most important items. And what this means is you essentially have to pick up every ancestral rare drop you see, because you want to look through every drop, because you never know the 1 in 1,000 chance that this is going to be the perfect roll that you're looking for that slot. And what this does is devalue legendary items, because legendary items essentially mean nothing. They do not have higher ranges for these affixes, and the only thing they have is a built-in aspect. And obviously, since you can imprint any aspect you've extracted from any legendary into any rare, there's really no point to these. Like if you're looking for a specific aspect that you haven't found and a high roll of that, that is what legendaries are good for. But besides that, you are mainly, because legendary drops are so few and far between, you can go 3 dungeons and not get an ancestral legendary drop, but you will get 30, 40 ancestral rares during that time, and they're essentially equivalent because of how this works with them wanting rares to be valuable. But what this means is, like, it's so much like looking at stuff, sorting through stuff, selling stuff, salvaging stuff, throwing it on the ground. Like it's a ton of that in a way that I do not think is particularly fun. And it really devalues legendary drops. Legendary drops where, keep in mind, the rates do not increase as you get higher. So from level 65 to level 100, you are just mainly looking at ancestral rare drops to try and find those stats that you want. And it's just a very strange system. Like I can't imagine, going through Borderlands and like picking up blue drops, as opposed to being excited about, the rarest legendary drops. Like it's in because you can transfer those powers between them. Like in some ways, this really helps with build customization because it allows you to use a wider range of gear to get the stuff you want in addition to your skill tree and paragon points and specializations. So in some ways it becomes easier to assemble a build because you can just use bazillions of rares in theory to imprint the aspects you get. But that does not make just because it's more easier to build craft and stuff. I don't think that makes farming itself fun, because farming itself is mainly based around finding the perfect ancestral rare roll. And like, sure, you can find a perfect roll on an ancestral legendary, but what's the point if all the stat ranges are the same? Like there's no real benefit to finding it on an ancestral legendary from what I can tell. Like there does not seem to be any core difference. If I'm wrong, like you can tell me, but this is what I've been hearing from essentially everybody, where no matter what level you are, the gearing process stays the same, which is why 70 to 100, 80 to 100 feels relatively pointless, because you're getting higher and higher for no real benefit, for pushing through higher nightmare dungeons, and eventually you're going to have your 5 runes max pretty quickly, and then it's like, what's the point? Like my barbarian is 90 and has had all of his runes maxed for, I don't know, 5 levels now, so there's no real point at all. So this is where seasonal characters come in, and we start over, and we're starting from scratch, and we can just toss away our eternal characters. But I do wish there was something more for the higher levels of farming in this. And like the other issue is the fact that so many other activities are giving you like the worst loot out of essentially anything. Tree of Whispers gives you nothing good ever. It's almost impossible to get anything really good. You might get a couple ancestrals if you're lucky. Helltides are mainly about the materials, and the chests can give you more ancestral legendaries than you'd see otherwise. But again, not that much difference between ancestral legendaries and ancestral rares. So again, this Legion events are mostly for XP and finding horse cosmetics. Same with world bosses. You'll get 1 ancestral and maybe 2 ancestrals from a cache or something, and that's essentially the only thing those are good for. And like I'm only doing world bosses now to try and get the horse armor sets. So that leaves Nightmare Dungeons. Nightmare Dungeons, Blizzard has said they have a higher drop rate of both legendaries and ancestral gear. So if that's essentially makes it the most efficient farming thing compared to really anything, which I don't know if that's a good thing, but that's kind of another issue with just herding everyone into Nightmare Dungeons and not much else. However, getting higher and higher and higher in Nightmare Dungeons does not really do anything to your gear collection. It just affects how much XP you get for glyph upgrading. So it's a very weird system. And like, yes, I've been able to put together fun builds and things. It's just the process of doing this has been extremely strange. Like clearing out my inventory from time to time so I can hold more ancestral rares so I don't have to go back to town and look at them all the time. This is also a weird situation where it becomes extremely hard to farm gear for your ults, if not impossible, because when you find this gear and you imprint it with an aspect, it's locked at whatever the level is. So if the aspect is, I don't even know what my higher ones are, but 75, like, and my guy comes in at level 60, even if I put it on a lower level item, like it's not going to carry over. They're going to have to get to that other level in order to be able to use that gear. Like I had a couple things in here that, so like I was saving a couple of rings. I think I deleted them now. That I thought, you could re-roll something here and there and, give it to my person, but that's not how it works. And like it's just a very strange system where you're farming solely for your character, essentially, and the main point is just getting as many ancestral rares and going through them as much as possible. And like I save ones that seem good and maybe good for a different build later, and that leads to a lot of Volt clutter, but I don't know. All of these systems kind of combine in a strange way. I guess it's good in many ways for build crafting, but for actual farming, from the excitement of getting a legendary drop, or the excitement of getting, especially like an ancestral legendary drop. There's really not excitement from getting a sacred legendary drop at all, because the stats will be worthless. There's no chance they will be good. So you're maybe hoping for a good aspect you can extract. Ancestral, what's the point? It's the same stat range, and it's just a built-in aspect that may or may not be good that you can just replace if you want. Uh, Uniques are the only like truly rare things that seem kind of exciting, and yet, given there are only a couple uniques on each class, some classes barely even have any useful ones. My barbarian is not using any uniques, for instance, for its Hoda build. It's just a very strange system. So it's a fun game. It's good. It's just I don't really get what they've done here with looting and farming, and why the main draw of farming, or the main way you find good gear, is to pick up every ancestral rare you see and go through them slowly. But anyway, that is what I have been thinking about lately, and we will put this on the shelf, I guess. We'll see if anything changes in the big patch tomorrow. But otherwise, we will turn to seasonal content. I will be starting a Necromancer, which will almost assuredly have its Bone Spear nerfed, so I will think of a different build, I guess, and there will be builds no one has considered because of the Malignant Heart mechanic. I did a full Necromancer run in my review copy. That was a minion-based build, but as of now, minions fall off pretty hard in the late game, and we'll see if those maybe get some buffs when the patch hits tomorrow. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.